Recording going. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thanks for joining our monthly Eloqua user group meeting. We're going to have a couple of different presentations today. I'm excited to share our presenters with you in the next couple of minutes. And I'm your host for today, Karen Pendle. I'm your host every month, actually. We've been doing our virtual Eloqua user group meeting for just over 2 years now. It was spurred by the pandemic, but it's worked out well, I think, to be able to get together, obviously in an easy format over Zoom. So I'm KP, I work at Sojourn. We're one of Oracle's partners, Adobe's partner, Salesforce's partner. We focus on marketing operations and MarTech, but personally, I've been using Eloqua for 17 years now. So a long time, couple of years as an actual marketer using it at 2 different companies. And then I switched over to consulting. So that's where I've spent most of my time helping people with Eloqua, their Eloqua. Implement it, integrate it, figure out which apps to use with it, what new features make sense to use, you name it. I live in Tennessee. I'm from upstate New York, where this lake resides. A couple hours north of New York City is where I lived right before I moved to the Nashville area in Tennessee, and enjoy time outside of work, hiking. I went to a dog sanctuary or dog rescue event with my partner there, Amy, on the left-hand side of the screen. And we got a little bit dialed up, not too much, but a little bit. So enjoy time outside of work, just with our pets and being outside as much as possible. And here's our agenda. So like always, it's very similar. I'm going to go through what I think is important for you to keep top of mind in the Eloqua space. So my reminders for you to keep you in the Eloqua know. I'm going to hand it over to Scott from Oracle. He's going to go in detail to highlight things for you guys about the Eloqua 22B release, the second release for this year of Eloqua. And then I'm going to hand it over to Motiva AI's Jesse. He's going to go through a pretty cool solution they have to help identify where you need to clean up your Eloqua contact database. And then we'll open it up with time we have left for questions. But of course, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please pop them into the Zoom Q&A. You can put them in the chat. It's just way easier for us personally if you can put them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we get to them. If not on this call, then we will follow up via email. I always make sure to take a look at all the questions that came through and export those out of Zoom and make sure we answered them. So fear not, we will get through them. And we all have PowerPoint slides, so it's going to be really exciting. Now we've got some good stuff for you guys. But first, just to keep you in the world know, actually, this month, every month has multiple things for like awareness or remembrance or whatever it is. For May, it's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So AAPI is often an abbreviation used for it. There's a little bit of the history there. There's a link to it. I'm going to have a copy of this entire presentation linked to from my follow-up email to you guys later today, along with the recording link. But there's quite a few folks in the world who are famous for being Asian Americans, and you can see some of those there from that graphic. But I thought this was pretty interesting that the first Asians that came to the United States were actually in the year 1587, long time ago, and it was Filipinos. And then you can see what countries are people from that are considered Asian American or Pacific Islander, and you can see there's a whole bunch from Asia and the Pacific Islands. So pretty cool history. And why they chose May, I always find interesting, like, why do they choose a certain month? And there's always a reason for it. May was pretty influential with the Japanese who migrated to the US in 1843. And then about 20 years later, Asian immigrants were a huge part of putting together, like actually assembling US railroads. So I think I have a comma off there. It's 20,000 Asian immigrants built a lot of the US railroads, some of which still exist today. In 1869 was when they were officially, I believe, opened. So for anybody who's Asian American, Pacific Islander, happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And then the other part, this is maybe not as happy-go-lucky, but May is mental health awareness. This personally means a lot to me. This is me here, I'm in the front. That's my oldest sister, Chris, Kelly, and my dad. Well, unfortunately, my dad took his life when we were about 2 years older than this. This was a photo taken 2 years prior to his passing from taking his own life, and obviously having some mental health challenges in that time of his life. So it's unfortunate. It's over 30 years later, and I've learned a lot from it, healed from it. Still wish he was here, of course, but want to encourage anybody here who either yourself or somebody you know that may be suffering with mental health, that we talk about it. I think that's the key, is that there's not that stigma of feeling shame that my dad killed himself. I felt that when I was young. I've gotten over that and learned it's not something to be ashamed of. Just to give you some stats here, actually 25% of people have mental illness, whether that is actually documented by a doctor or not. There's probably more than that, but in COVID, some of you may have seen this in the news, but COVID actually triggered a big increase in people having depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, a lot of the seclusion that went along with COVID actually influenced that, and not having the ability to socialize as much. Thankfully, obviously, a lot of countries, not all, but a lot of countries have relaxed the having to be, separate. I'm losing the word, isolation. But anyway, there's still people feeling that. It's not like it just goes away, like, oh, now I can go out to dinner, I'm not going to be depressed. It's not that easy. I wish it was. And then actually specifically related to the worst case scenario is suicide with mental health issues. There are over 700,000 people who die from suicide every year worldwide. So it's not a leading killer or reason that people die, but it's pretty substantial. And if you look at the people who are passing from suicide, it's mostly teenagers. Suicide is the fourth leading cause of death for teenagers, so 15 to 19-year-olds. It's pretty startling, and just want to make you aware of these things. If you have teenagers, there's obviously a lot of reasons to keep an eye on those who have mental health issues. Again, whether a doctor says they're there or not, if you just observe it as a parent, that to me is enough. 3 things that have helped me that I heard on an interview recently, I think it was last week, with Ashley Judd there on the left-hand side. She's an actress, well known in the United States, probably globally, but her sister is Winona Judd on the right, and then their mom, Naomi Judd, just passed April 30th. She actually shot herself. She killed herself. And of course, the 2 daughters, are extremely upset about it, but their mom had been battling mental health for years. And one of the things Ashley said in the interview about her mom's passing, so just like about a week after her mom passed, Good Morning America interviewed Naomi, sorry, not Naomi, geez, she'd be an angel they'd be talking to. Ashley, they interviewed. Ashley said a bunch of things that really hit me, and that I think for people who have themselves struggled with mental illness, or somebody they know has struggled with it, she just said things that were very intelligent and helpful. And this was one of the ones that stuck with me. When you are close to someone, or maybe not even close, like somebody in your family, extended family, friends who have mental health and or addiction, which oftentimes go hand in hand. I have 2 sisters who are both alcoholics, and depression, anxiety. Unfortunately, they have that combination of mental health challenges and addiction. And I have to remind myself, I didn't cause it, I can't cure it, and I can't control it. Anyways, those are just 3 things to keep in mind. It seems really simple, and it's not like it just solves it in the moment when you're upset about something with them, or with yourself if you're struggling with depression, but it's just something to consider. I know myself personally, I did try to control it. I tried to save my family members multiple times and put my own self at risk and my mental health at risk in doing so, and created a lot of stress that wasn't necessary. And then physical issues like migraines and cold sores. So with that, going to kind of switch topics here and get into what you guys are here for, which would be things related to Eloqua. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to, is if anybody ever, and I think I've mentioned this over the years when I have presented, and it made sense to mention it, like Mental Health Awareness Month. If anybody is struggling yourself, of course, I encourage you to reach out to your loved ones. But if you ever just need someone to talk to, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience here, fortunately or unfortunately, from my dad's passing to almost losing my mom to suicide as well a couple of years later, and both of my sisters have attempted. So I've been through a lot of therapy and meditation and retreats and such to help to heal from this. I am by no means an expert, but I am there to listen if anybody would like someone to listen. Okay, here we go. So the Oracle Marquee Awards. So this is something I mentioned in the last 2 Eloqua user groups, but it's getting close to the deadline of June 17th for you to submit if you would like to win an award, an Oracle Marquee Award. Oracle's recognizing marketers globally who have done something hopefully fantastic or close to it. So the award nominations are due in just a couple of weeks, June 17th, 5 Pacific. So just keep that in mind. And the website does a pretty good job detailing the categories, what you need to really think about having in your nomination. It's one of those things where statistics or metrics that you can include will definitely help. Some people have been creative over the years. When they submit their award nomination, they have like a fun video that goes along with it. So whatever it takes, but the actual awards won't be announced, I believe, until October at Oracle Cloud World, which it's kind of a combination of two big Oracle events, Open World and Oracle Customer Experience coming together. And I think there's supposed to be about 20,000 people they're expecting to show up in Las Vegas in October, towards the end of October. I think it's the 16th through the 20th, something like that in Las Vegas. So don't forget to do that if you're interested in winning an award. And the other thing, which actually Scott's going to go into detail about, is the next new release of Eloqua. Every quarter there's a release of Eloqua. They do them by quarter. So Q1 is 22A, Q2, 22B, Q3, 22C, so forth. And it'll be new features and in certain cases, fixes of potential bugs or things that users wanted modified in the platform. He's going to go into detail, so I'm not going to share any more about it other than to mention here's the schedule. Some of you have already had your Eloqua environments updated, pod 7. You can see that was done in April. We've got a bunch of people coming up to get their Eloqua instance this automatically happens, by the way. So pod 3, 4, 6, that'll be, tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern. And let's see here, tonight will be pod 8, as we can see there. So hang on for just a few more minutes and we'll hand it over to Scott to go into detail about the new release. Some other reminders, Topliners is still the place to be to get updates on the new releases, to get your questions answered about maybe you're trying to do something new and don't know where to start in Eloqua. Not step-by-step instructions for the most part, but ideas, product roadmaps are actually shared there as well from the Oracle product management team. The product management team at Oracle does a great job of communicating with Eloqua users and other Oracle marketing product users. But I would definitely encourage you guys to join the Eloqua Insiders group and take a look if you're interested in other Oracle marketing products. It's a great way to actually take a closer look at them. Of course, you can talk to a salesperson and get a demo, but it's nice to see the communities and what's going on and the challenges people are having with the platform, how they're solving them specifically, like with Eloqua. Eloqua free training reminder here. Some people don't realize, but Eloqua's Help Center is fantastic. We support other marketing automation platforms that compete with Eloqua, like Marketo, Pardot, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Adobe Campaign. And what I can tell you is, this is my opinion, but I look at all of those help centers or knowledge bases frequently because I actually do a quarterly webinar, sharing comparisons of the platforms, and having to go into their help centers. Eloqua's is definitely, in my opinion, the best, with screenshots, with links to videos to show you how to do something. There's no cost to it. And that's obviously a nice piece of it. So I would encourage you to check out the videos in the Help Center for free training. If you just want to look specifically at their videos from the Help Center, you can go to the Eloqua YouTube channel. That's really where they have them stored, along with other videos for other Oracle marketing products. Oracle University does have the Eloqua Explorer path where you can take a few hours of training and get just high-level understanding of Eloqua. It won't go into a ton of detail, but it's a good course to take to just start wrapping your head around what this Eloqua thing is. So if it makes sense for you to take it or to pass it along to someone, it's no cost. And like I said, I think it's like 2 hours at the most, not very long. And then if you missed this meeting or have missed it in the past, missed it in the future, missed it in the past, don't worry, we always record it, and usually that same day put it on our website in our resource center, which is driven by Uberflip. I don't get paid to say that, by the way. When I shared this stuff, I just share it because I talk to people a lot who are like, what are some of the good tools out there for content management and this and that and social, blah, blah, blah. Well, we use Octopus for social, Uberflip for our content management system, Eloqua is our marketing automation platform. Salesforce is our CRM. Anyways, these are just very common tools used by probably a lot of you, but we like to firsthand see how they work for us before we recommend them for anybody else. And the last but not least, outside of Eloqua, if you're like me and you want to try to keep a pulse on what are the common topics in the marketing space overall, like marketing operations topics, ABM, other MarTech, what's happening in, you know, the ABM tech world, strategies people are talking about. There was a lot shared on different websites about people adjusting marketing strategies for B2B and B2C. And anyways, ClickZ does a great job of keeping you in the know as far as marketing strategies and technologies. They do an excellent job. And it's a daily newsletter. If you want to sign up for it, it's free. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott. Again, he's been here before. So if you like, I think that name Scott Lang sounds familiar. Scott has presented, actually, I think Scott, a couple months ago in Q1, you presented the 22A release highlights. So thanks for coming back to present to us about the 22B release. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. Always enjoy hearing the tidbits of information that you share at the beginning. So appreciate you sharing all that information. It's always informative and entertaining for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to touch on the 22B release here. As Karen mentioned, Pod 7 has it already. There's a couple others that will be released this weekend, and then the following pods towards the end of the month there. As usual, safe harbor applies. For most part, everything we'll review here is included in the 22B release. Some things are in controlled availability, and things are always subject to change as we move forward. So always like to mention that. I know Karen touched on some of the resources specifically in Topliners. I always like to mention as well, it is a really great resource for a number of reasons that Karen mentioned, but also with the release itself. If you aren't able to attend our official customer release briefing, we do record it. We do post it in the release center here, along with a lot of notes and highlights. It's a great place for everyone to be able to post questions as well and get the attention of the full product team as well for anything that's coming out. So if there's anything that we don't get to today or get to in detail, or if there's any questions you have that maybe pop into your mind after today, posting them in the release center on the 22B release is the perfect place for it. As I mentioned, it'll get a lot of eyes on it, everybody from our product team. So it's a great place to post any of those questions that you have. And obviously being able to take advantage of the community is a big plus as well. And then if you aren't getting the release emails that we send out as well, definitely something I'd recommend signing up for to make sure that you're in the know of when we have the release briefings on the days and times so that you can attend them or at least register and have the recording available to you as well. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. Okay, so with that, let's touch on the 22B highlights. There's quite a few things that went in, so we'll get through as much as we can today. Again, it is posted in the release center as well if we don't get to anything specific. So first thing, we had mentioned in 22A release that we did add the split decision percentage-based routing step to the campaign canvas. So with 22B, we've also introduced and made available this feature on the program canvas as well. So you can look for that. Very sought after feature for a long time from a lot of our customers. So we've now added in both the campaign canvas and the program canvas. Kind of a follow-up from some of the information we shared with 22A as far as the auto opens and auto clicks. And I know Attilio from our team did a follow-up session on that. So hopefully there was a lot of information shared between herself and me and the rest of the product team as well. But with the 22B, they've added a new metric into Insight as well. And this will be in the email click-through subject area, and this will be for the auto click metric. So there was the auto open metric added in 22A, and now the auto click metric will be available after the 22B release. These metrics, as we mentioned with the auto opens in 22A, the auto click metrics will only be captured after the 22B release, so it's not historical. It'll just start capturing them from the 22B release. We have introduced a change to the lead scoring limits. So this is just to continue providing the high level of service and performance. So we've made a change to and introduced a limit on this. So as you can see there on the screen, depending on the trim you're on, there is a limit per instance. So if you are on enterprise, for example, you don't need to share the 30 across all instances. You'll have a maximum of 30 per instance. These limits, though, you'll see that they'll be enforced at the time of trying to enable a model. Now, if you're currently over this limit, you'll be able to, that will basically be your limit. So if you are on standard and you have 18, for example, your limit will be 18 for the time being. You won't be able to add any beyond there. So you'll kind of be grandfathered in if you have already exceeded that limit right now. So again, you'll see those enforced at the time of enabling. We are also continuing with Eloqua's secure first product changes. So we're going to be rolling out the availability of the automated certificate management. So this will be a CA program. It will be initially available to pods 6 and 7 only. We will be planning to roll it out to the remainder pods in the months following the 22B release, but we are just starting with those 2 pods right now. There is a product notice posted on Topliners as well for more information if it's something that you want to look and take a look at as well. Really, the goal of this is to have all of our customers secured by default and just basically eliminate the worry of having to go through the process of purchasing the SSL certificates. So we've been working towards this probably over the past year or so. We've introduced a few new things over the last year, like the certificate management screen and things of that nature. So this is kind of following along with that. So a couple of points that I wanted to touch on this that'll probably answer a fair number of questions that people have. First and foremost, there is no additional cost to customers for this feature. You may need to work with your IT team to update any domain configuration if needed. That's something that can be provided to you from support when you open an SR with them. They'll be able to tell you if there's any changes that you need to make with your IT team. You can also check if this feature is enabled for your instance as well. If you go to the new certificate management screen in the setting area, it'll tell you there whether it is enabled or not enabled. So that'll give you full visibility of that. Now, when the Eloqua owned certificate, when we basically provision it the first time and secure your domains, we do send out an email to the customer admins so that you're aware of it. The domains are also displayed in the certificate management screen as well, so you'll have full visibility. You do not need to worry about renewing them. We will renew the certificates roughly about every 70 to 90 days. They come up for expiry every 90 days. We start the process probably within 20 days of expiry. So you'll see those renew as well. We won't send out any notification on that. We don't want to inundate people with too many emails, but you will see the updated expiry date in the certificate management screen. So you'll be able to see that. The certificates are specific to each Eloqua instance, so they're not shared across instances or anything. In most cases, customers will see that they'll have one SAN cert for any image domains, and they'll have another SAN cert for application microsites tracking domains. So you'll see 2 different certificates in your domain. Now, when you're creating new domains and when you're creating new microsites, the process remains the same. If you're creating new image applications domains, that is done through support. You just won't have to worry about purchasing the certificates if it's enabled for you. In the microsite screen, when you go in, there'll be a toggle in that screen, which you can see on here. If the toggle is on, it shows that the feature is enabled. Again, you don't have to worry about purchasing a certificate because we will secure it for you automatically once you create the microsite. You do have the ability to bring your own certificate still if you want to for any of the domains. So in the microsite screen here, you could just toggle that off and you could go through the regular process as well. So we do have that ability for you to continue bringing your own certificate. We highly encourage people as we roll this out more to move to this feature so that it's automated. The renewal is all taken care of and it takes out any concerns of renewals as well. And then one last point on this, for any existing secure domains that you have, if the feature is enabled, you can choose to allow Eloqua to take over for it. So basically, when we get into that 20-day window prior to expiry, we will take over securing that domain with an Eloqua-owned DV cert. And you don't, whether that's a choice that you want to have us take it over or it was forgotten about, it eliminates that 11th hour panic of not having their certificate renewed as well. So again, we can take those over. The only exception to that is wildcard certs. So if you do have an existing wildcard cert securing your domains, and you want Eloqua to take over, you'll just need to contact support. They can walk you through what needs to be done so that we can then take over securing those domains. Okay. So that's everything with certificate management. So we're pretty excited to roll that out. Again, a lot of requests for that over the last year while we were working on it. So we have also introduced the ability to set engaged send limits as well. So the Eloqua administrators can limit the number of emails that a rep can send out. So this is something else that is rolling out as well. And just really to help prevent contact fatigue and unsubscribes by having sales reps sending out too many emails too frequently as well. So those limits will now be able to be applied. Continuing with SMS, obviously there's been a lot of talk about this over the last year or so as well as we continue to roll this out in CA. So there's a few new enhancements as well that have been added with the 22B release for this feature. There's some form processing steps to manage the preference around SMS. That includes the opt-in, opt-out for the phone number, the subscribe and unsubscribe for global contacts as well. You also see that there's some phone number validation that's been added in as well. So now you can choose whether or not you want to actually validate the phone number. So the contact field contains a valid phone number as opposed to just a value in there. So that validation has been added as well. Managing of keyword response. So this is something else that has been added into the workflow. So again, creating response messages be sent for invalid incoming keywords. You can set an invalid response created for each code as well. So again, giving more management control over that. There was two decision steps added as well on the campaign canvas. So basically to be able to evaluate based on reply to SMS and SMS being sent as well. And then we'll get into some other updates that we had there. So there's some bulk API updates. So we're modifying how contacts basically are linked. Important definitions now include the update rule by field parameter. And this will basically specify how Eloqua should handle updating the records by field. So there is more information on this in the developer chain blog as well. So again, a good place to go, as Karen mentioned about the Help Center before, you'll find some additional valuable information on this as well if you have any further questions or want to dig into that a little bit further. We did announce as well that as far as deprecating the SOAP API, this was announced that the support had ended for it back April 1st, 2017. And then with 22D this year, the SOAP API will be deleted. So if you are using it, you should switch immediately to the REST API so that you can make sure that you've got everything in place prior to 22D. Okay. The Infinity Action Feeder, we have had some updates as well to support matching with some contact fields. So you'll see as far as the hashed email address, business phone, mobile phone as well. So these are now supported in addition to the other fields that we had being the contact ID, email address, and visitor ID. So again, just continuing to add on to this integration that we have. There is also a new integration with Oracle Commerce as well. Again, with the 22B official release briefing, we had some members from the from the Commerce product team on as well. So there may be some additional information in that recording that you may want to look at and listen to as well. But this integration basically allows Eloqua users to leverage some of the key actions from Commerce as they're building their campaigns as well. So some really interesting details on this integration. So again, something to consider and looking at our official release briefing for more details on that. We have made some changes as well to the CDO API endpoints as far as the search limits go. So you'll see any of the records with over 1 million records are being updated to accept only one search request at a time. The request will be limited when searching using only non-index fields or not including an indexing field without a leading wildcard. So the limit will be per user per the contact custom object. So again, some changes that we made there that applies to the 1.0 and 2.0 endpoints. There was contact views. These were added on for the Microsoft Outlook, so this will allow the reps to access the contact views. You do need to have the contact permissions and basically then able to create and share the contact views with the reps as well. And they can choose the contacted view to use and see that via the add-in. And then with the data export, so 22B, we're modifying the data export. And this will honor the contact security based in the user that creates the export. So again, another update there around the data. Okay. Karen, that's all for me. I was keeping an eye on the time, so I think we kept it within that time to share there. So I will, from a high level, that's everything that we went out with the 22B release. Again, there's a lot of detail in top liners on the release center as well. I see there's some comments in the chats and Q&A, so I'll go through those, Karen, as well, and answer where I can or answer at the end.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott.
No problem.
Right. And yeah, Maria, I see you have a question. Scott will take a look at that. We got through the other question. Thank you, Jesse, for helping with those. And actually, without further ado, I think I'm sharing the wrong dang screen. Bear with me. I'm going to just stop sharing and introduce Jesse. He works for Motiva AI and is based out of one of the prettiest parts of the US, in my opinion, Denver area in Colorado. And we thought this topic was applicable. I know it's like late into spring or maybe it's early summer where you live, but keeping Eloqua clean can mean a lot of things. There's the contacts in the database, which is what he's going to hone in on today. There's contact fields cleanup, custom objects cleanup, accounts cleanup, the fields within each, assets cleanup, et cetera, et cetera. Today, we're going to talk about one of the topics that you pay the most for if you exceed it would be contacts, since the way that Eloqua pricing works is you have a maximum number of contacts you can have in Eloqua. You can exceed it. There's no problem. Oracle will allow you to do that, but you will typically pay more to Oracle after a certain period of time of being over your limit of the number of contacts. So keeping your Eloqua database is clean for that reason, and also for a lot of other reasons. I'm not going to steal any more of Jesse's thunder. So Jesse, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody, I'm just gonna click on the old share button here. And all right, let me know, Karen, if you can see that.
Looks
cool.
good.
All right, well, yeah, thanks everybody for joining today and listening to me talk about this very exciting topic. Quickly about me, my name is Jesse Nobbe, and as KP mentioned, I'm working with Motiva, specifically around marketing automation services and strategy. I've spent about 10 years in this area, primarily working with Eloqua throughout that time. So, you know, I'm certified Eloqua expert in all that good stuff. As you see, I, you know, am over here answering questions and everything. So hopefully my words carry some weight. But let's dive into it. So some of the things to keep in mind when we're thinking about, you know, what are we doing when we're gonna try and clean up our database, our contact database. Especially important nowadays, are the engagement signals that you're seeing coming from people? Or are they coming from automated systems? Are they coming from you know, malicious entities or
Jesse, I think we lost your audio.
who are those that you want to put on the back burner, and who are those that you want to just completely halt sending messages to? Next up is just reducing your licensing fees, right? You may have a very high contact tier or band, whatever you want to call it. And in reality, you may be able to bring that number down, but keep your tier high so that you can sort of fill that back up with quality contacts. Or maybe you can bring the number down significantly and in your next renewal cycle, you know, save a little bit of money on your renewal. And I know through speaking with folks at Oracle in the past, this is not a sensitive topic for them. They've asked me to help educate people to keep the contact database down because nobody likes to talk about it. You know, they'd rather that you would police your own contacts. So hopefully that's something I can help you with in this presentation. So the next thing here on the list is how do you best navigate this? And this is where I'm going to introduce you to a term that we've come up with at Motiva called the dark pool. And we are borrowing this term. I believe it is commonly used in finance, but let's dig into that a little bit. So basically, we're saying that the dark pool is comprised of a number of different types of contacts. Those that are unengaged, like significantly unengaged for a certain period of time and certain number of messages that have been sent to those contacts. The entire population of bounce contacts, whether that's hard or soft bounces, any contacts where you're seeing fake engagement signals coming from inbox providers, and also contacts that are originating as spam through bots. And you know, we've come up with a number of different ways to slice and dice these and to think about how you can attack this problem and better characterize it. But the goal here today is to talk about what can you do yourself right away to start getting a handle on this. But you know, through our research and through you know, various projects that we've executed, we've been seeing that there are pretty significant, you know, number of contacts in everyone's database that fall into this dark pool. So, you know, here are some quick hits, some easy things that you can do to start better understanding this problem and characterizing it. Number one, and this is a go-to I think I use all the time through various projects, build outs and things, is getting creative with segments. So I think probably everyone on the call is using exclusion filters for hard bounces and unsubscribes. If you're not, I would recommend that you do. And sometimes there are cases where people prefer all of the contacts to go into their campaign so that, you know, you can monitor where they end up. But I think for the most part, using that exclusion is the tried and true. You know, you'd rather not have those contacts get into a campaign at all to sort of pollute the steps with stuck records because it could be confusing. But what I'm recommending here is that maybe you go a little bit beyond that and think of different ways that you can leverage shared filters as exclusions. First of all, just so that you are armed with them and they're easily usable and you're not reinventing or rebuilding your filters every time you build a segment, because that could be more error prone. But also, oh, sorry, looks like I lost the presentation there. You still with me?
Yep, sorry, I couldn't hit my mute
You bet.
button fast enough.
Sorry, let me jump back to that slide. Okay, so with the segments, what I'm suggesting is that you, first of all, use shared filters so that you you have something that you can pull from that's consistent and reusable. In my experience, I've seen people that build segments from scratch every single time, which to me is insane. But I also think that you should think a little bit further beyond just that global unsubscribe and hard bounce back exclusion. So maybe you repeat soft bounce backs. Like if there are contacts that just soft bounce back, more than 4 times, 5 times, you could think of a way to get that into your exclusion criteria to suppress those contacts, maybe temporarily, because on the other hand, those soft bounce backs, maybe it's temporary and they come back around and they're reachable again. And then other ways, I think you'll have to think about whatever is applicable to your database, but maybe there's more that you could be doing with those exclusions. The other thing that you can do with segments is, and this is what I do a lot, and what I really like about segments is that you don't have to use them to feed anything, right? They don't have to feed campaigns. They don't have to feed programs. You can just use them to break down your database without having to jump into Insight, without having to look at the dashboard reports. And you can be more creative in terms of what you do, I think, with segments too, because you can have, a bunch of different filters in there, a bunch of different lists, etc., to start to manipulate things. Maybe you want to do some list operations or whatever. But it's a good, quick and dirty way to do monitoring and to figure some things out. So keeping on moving, next thing is, like I was saying earlier, counting the number of soft bounce backs. And if you're seeing contacts that are soft bouncing a lot, maybe you want to move them over into the hard bounce back column. So you can do that in, I think, 2 or 3 different ways in Eloqua. But this is again where I think you might want to think outside the box in terms of how you accomplish this. But maybe it's through a program, or maybe it's through a segment or something like that. However you want to identify these contacts, and you're just going to have to set a threshold that you're comfortable with, and then you can mark those contacts as hard bounces. And before you do that, I think it would merit doing some more research on some of those contacts, or the domains, or the accounts, or whatever, so that you can make an informed judgment call. But in this way, you'll be able to move the needle in terms of oversending to contacts that may never receive those messages, and that should help with your deliverability, etc. And then ultimately, the bounce back status is saved when you delete a contact. So if you're to the point where you're ready to remove those contacts, do it. That's a really easy way to free up room in your database, is just get rid of the hard bounces. My further recommendation there, though, too, is that if you have integrations, just think through what the impact of removing the contacts from Eloqua is going to be, because they could come back around through other systems if you don't address them everywhere. So number 3 here, be more nuanced with your re-engagement campaigns. So what I have seen, and what I think a lot of people are doing in terms of re-engagement, is it's an every once in a while kind of thing. And we're going to build a segment, or maybe a few segments, and we're going to put together a really simple campaign with 1, 2, 3 touches, and just kind of hope for the best. So we're going to put all those contacts into this campaign, and if we get some hits back, great. If not, we'll remove those contacts. So with 22B, Scott was saying there's this new split decision step on the canvases, which to me is really interesting. There are lots of different use cases for that, of course. And this is one where I could see that being used with other filters and other decisions to start to trickle in contacts for re-engagement, and not necessarily having to address this entire population in one go. So you could do a split on a canvas to say, okay, well, these are the unengaged contacts. We're going to let 10% of those contacts go through into an email and see what the outcome is. And you could still do this in a separate re-engagement campaign, but it's a way for you to have a lower flow of context. It's maybe not hurting your deliverability because of the likelihood of them engaging with those messages. And finally, there are lots of other recommendations we can talk about off this call, but these are the ones that I thought were pretty pertinent. The last one is start trying out the form spam prevention, and also start looking for those contacts that are repeat offenders or high submitters to forms. So this is something we've seen at Motiva, where once we started to really look at these metrics, there are certain contacts that stick out like a sore thumb, and they'll submit 1 or 2 forms thousands of times in a day. So you can find them and then address them pretty easily. Another way to look at it is look at forms that obviously have spikes in submissions, where you're getting a lot of fake contacts coming through. But I think that this form spam prevention is potentially really, really useful. A lot of the things that came out of that are things that I thought of in a project years ago, and I'm really happy to see that Oracle is bringing that to the fore. Okay, so next up is, you've decided you want to go down this path. Are you going to make it into a huge project and try to take on everything all at once? Or are you going to break this down into smaller chunks that are more attainable? Obviously, I think that the latter is the way that you should go. But there are lots of different ways that you can approach breaking a big problem down into a smaller problem. So some of the approaches that we've taken are via a date range. So maybe you just want to look at a quarter's worth of activity data, and whatever contacts fall into that category, whether it's those that have been active or those that have not been active, that's going to bring things down and make the decisioning process that much easier. Another way to look at that is, maybe you want to look at new contacts that were created within a certain window, or contacts that were created before a certain time. Just another way to split things up. And then magnitude. So I was already talking about this earlier with the soft bounces. But again, like maybe you want to look at how many contacts have engaged within a certain number of sends. So if you start bringing that send number up, how does that affect the engagement level? And then you can further bring in the date range into that as well. And then the last one here on our list of suggestions is by account. So if that's what's really important to you, then maybe you want to start with your key accounts and move on from there once you've taken care of those. So maybe you just want to do 5 or 10 accounts to start and work your way out from there. And then you can also, as another benefit of doing this is being able to establish, okay, we did this for a certain portion of the database. What were the outcomes of that in terms of our deliverability and our other KPIs? All right, and with that, we're at our final slide and a challenge. So I want to challenge everyone to pick one of these strategies and try it out. And if get creative. If there wasn't something on my list, like I said, there's lots of different ways that you can go about doing these things. Try it out and tell us how it turned out. Charlie, who's also on the call, has authorized me today to give this to everybody. If you want us to do a spot check, we'll look at 3 months of your data and we'll give you these outcomes that we've listed here. So I want you all to try it on your own first, though, and learn from it. And then that will, benefit everyone in the end. We'll be able to have a more cogent conversation when we have that time to speak. All right, and that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you going through that. So guys, Eloqua contact database cleanup is something that affects all of us. And we recommend going along with what Jesse and the team of Motiva AI are recommending, routinely looking at cleaning up your Eloqua contact database. I recommend if you can do it monthly, great. If you don't have time for that, quarterly. If you don't have time for quarterly, then annually at the minimum, because it really does impact your segmentation results, scoring, personalization. If you're not doing dynamic personalization, okay, that doesn't affect you then, but it really makes things more accurate when you're trying to get your campaigns out the door in Eloqua. It's also, obviously, we've talked about, it impacts the amount of money you pay Oracle. And at your renewal with Oracle, which everybody at some point hits or close to that renewal date, Oracle is going to bring up the fact that you're over on your contact band, as they call it, your maximum contacts in your contract. So staying within that is ideal. And sometimes it makes sense to, for sure, add more contacts and expand that contact band. Like if you're a fast growing company and adding new customers routinely and contacts to the database and leads, etc. But that said, we all have a dark pool. We all have contacts in our database who are no longer at a company. Their email address is invalid. It's hard bounced or it's soft bounced 2 out of 3 times you tried to send to it. So it's happening. That specific scenario is happening for our customers, which at Sojourn, most of our customers use Eloqua still. And actually, regardless of what platform they're using, Eloqua or Marketo, etc., there's so much job change happening in the world that our databases are getting darker and darker more quickly. So tools like the Dark Pool Cleanup app that Motiva AI has created can help you stay on top of that. And in the various scenarios that Jesse walked us through today, not just the hard bounce backs or invalids, as we call them, but you've got inactive contacts, the whole scenario we talked about, there's various. Jesse, just to point out to you, there is a question for you from John.
Yep. Yeah, I was just looking at it, so I think I can answer this live.
Cool.
So first of all, I think with the form spam prevention, those if they are identified, those contacts aren't going to get written into the database, and it's going to be transparent from their perspective. But yeah, so say they do slip through the cracks. Well, I suppose you could sort of fall back to some of the old school methods of using the logic, the conditions on your form processing steps would be like my sort of like simple knee-jerk way of preventing them from actually being written into the database. Another thing I think you could do is look at maybe, if it's a particular domain that isn't common, you put it on the master exclude and at least prevent them from getting emails out of your database. I think that hopefully everyone is leveraging the master exclude. I've seen it not really be used that much, which is to me kind of crazy. It's there to save you, from emailing those people that you shouldn't be. So, there's lots of different ways that you can populate that, whether it's through an explicit list or filters or segments. Lots of different ways that you can get contacts on there. So even if they're living in your database as a contact, at least you're not going to email them. And then, you just can maybe take the segment approach to try to better characterize those contacts and, mark them for deletion. I think the harder question though is like, can you prevent them from getting into your database at all? And I don't think that that's necessarily like something that you can do. It's really just about staying on top of it and really preventing them from getting in the first place as much as possible. Another thing that I like I said, I did a project about this a long time ago where this company had a disgruntled former employee that was spamming their forms with 60,000 submissions a day or something. And one of the recommendations we came up with was, if you can, create a like an intermediary process. So the form lives on your CMS, and you're doing a repost, you can use that as another way to filter these submissions. So, that's your sort of gate between the CMS and Eloqua. Or if you use something like FormStack, that's another place where you can, have some sort of intervention from them getting into to Eloqua.
Thank you, Jesse. So yeah, form spam bots are annoying, obviously, and they keep changing. So you think you've solved your form spam bot issue, and then something else creeps in. That's not uncommon, guys. So that's like, people will work hard. They'll use Eloqua's form spam prevention feature, and it'll work for like 6 months, and all of a sudden some other new tactic happens from the dang spam botters that gets through Eloqua forms. So just keep in mind, it's not something that we solve and then we're good to go. Unfortunately, it creeps up as they get more intelligent and figure out ways to get around form spam prevention.
It's definitely a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, it really is. It's a pain in the bum. This is the master exclude in Eloqua. I just want to show you guys this. Jesse mentioned this. So when you go to the asset area of Eloqua email setup, you've got master exclude. I wish they called it master email exclude. That's what it's for. And you can do it a couple different ways. Like he said, one of the most common ways people set this up during their Eloqua implementation or setup is by domains. We actually exclude a lot of our competitors. So if you're competitors, I don't know how you got here, but you can just literally type in their email domain, and Eloqua will make sure that nobody from Symantec.com in their email address gets sent an email from this Eloqua instance that Sojourn uses and pays Oracle for. So that's just one of the ways, but that's more specific to email exclusion. Just wanted to mention that, but it'll help. So if somebody comes in from a form submission to, so like whether it's an Eloqua landing page with a form on it or your website submitting that form data to Eloqua, so long as that domain is there, somebody from my example here, nothing against Symantec, just totally using them for an example. If they submit one of our forms, they won't get the confirmation email like that form sends to them typically. So it's a way to filter out your competition. That's why oftentimes people use the domains for competitor domains. It doesn't have to be though. And then at the segment level, you can do that too. So different ways to do it, but stepping back for a second, just want to show you guys one of the things we do in our Eloqua to keep an eye on the database, on top of using something like Motiva AI's dark pool cleanup product, just to keep an eye on things, to glance at things. We just look at our hard bounces, global unsubscribes. This is real basic stuff that Jesse indicated, like you at least could do this with Eloqua out of the box. How many contacts are total in our database? Yes, this is on the home screen or my Eloqua page, but I like to see it and compare it to our total hard bounces, global unsubscribes. We could add soft bounces here, and then we exclude the ones that we are like, well, they're not really marketable, and come up with our final total, which is less than half of our database. So we have cleanup to do on our end, which we do probably like twice a year. We're not as good as we should be at it. So we're almost at our time. Let me check the chat, make sure I'm not missing any other questions. I think we are good to go. So with that, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to just reply to me when I send you guys the follow-up email, or reach out whatever way you prefer to do so. Our next Eloqua user group meeting, we try to keep it always the third Thursday of the month at the same time, same place. So it'll be June 16th. Hopefully you'll join us. I don't know what the topics are yet. They're on my planner for this. I don't have it memorized, but I'll definitely get them on our website. Actually, today we'll update the Eloqua user group registration page with the topics planned for June. If you would like to present, please help. I don't want to beg, but I'm near it. So we'd love to have actual Eloqua users present. It's I think one of the best ways to hear from your fellow community folks using Eloqua is to actually hear from users. So it's a struggle for me to find people who will do so. It doesn't have to be 15, 20 minutes. It can be 5 minutes and just share a tip. So no pressure, but please help. And with that, thank you guys very much. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday and weekend, and stay safe and be kind. Bye, everybody.